Your phone buzzes. You glance down. A notification you didn't expect. Maybe it's the security camera feed cutting to black. Maybe it's an AirTag moving with you. Maybe it's just the sound of a door opening downstairs when you know you're alone. One moment. That's all it takes. One moment where the ordinary world peels back and you realize something is deeply, irreversibly wrong. Tonight, 4 real people. 4 encounters that actually happened. No ghost stories. No urban legends. Just ordinary people who crossed paths with something they were never supposed to see. Night shift workers who realized they weren't alone in the building. Travelers who checked into Airbnbs and checked out of reality. And one woman who discovered she'd been followed home by a man who knew exactly where she lived. This is the cursed owl, and every word of this is real. He was already inside the building. He had the access code.
Access granted.
He cut the power, and he was climbing the stairs, 1 floor at a time. Not every monster hides in the dark. Some of them wear masks. Some of them know the building better than you do. Tonight, 3 real security guards share the shifts that changed them forever. The nights they realized they were never alone. This is the cursed owl, and every word of this is real. I've been in this industry for 6 years, long enough to earn my seniority, long enough to know what a normal shift feels like, and exactly what one doesn't. I have more training than most of the guards I work with, more credentials, more experience. Because of that, I get to choose my shifts, and I never choose overnights. But a few months ago, that changed. The company picked up a new contract, a government building, 6 stories tall. The location was strange, even for a government facility. It sat in the middle of nowhere, a 6-story concrete structure surrounded by a massive parking lot, enclosed by a 10-foot metal fence, topped with barbed wire. 1 way in, 1 way out. The side road leading to it stretched 3 miles from the main highway. Thick woods pressed against the fence on every side. No houses, no traffic, no lights, except the building itself. At night, it felt like the rest of the world stopped existing beyond that fence. Because of my seniority, I normally worked mornings or evenings, weekends off. But after a few months on this contract, we started losing overnight guards. People just didn't want to stay, especially on weekends. The overnight weekend shift was 1 guard, alone. My supervisor asked me to help out temporarily. I needed the money, new apartment coming up, so I said yes. I really should have said no. The first 2 weekends were completely fine, nothing unusual, nothing out of place. But the third weekend is what I still think about. It was Saturday, around 2 in the morning. A severe thunderstorm had moved in. Heavy rain, thunder shaking the walls of the building every few minutes. I was in the camera control room on the 6th floor. Lights off. Just me, the monitors, and the sound of rain hammering the windows. I was doing what most overnight guards do when they're alone at 2 in the morning. Phone propped up, movie downloaded, Game Boy on the desk beside me. After sitting for a while, I got up to stretch, walked over to the window, pulled the blinds back slightly, just watching the storm, wind tearing debris across the parking lot, rain coming down in sheets. I was about to walk away and grab an energy drink when lightning struck. For 1 split second, everything outside lit up white, and I saw it. A figure, darting between 2 trees, beyond the fence, maybe 20 feet from one to the other. I didn't move. I stood at that window, staring into the darkness, waiting for another flash of lightning. It came. Nothing there. I told myself I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks. So I walked away, went down the hall, downed the energy drink and the time it took to walk back. 5 minutes. I got back to the control room and immediately noticed it. One of the camera feeds was out. The camera covering the back parking lot. The exact area I had been watching through that window. I went to the window, looked through the blinds in the direction of the camera. It was hanging off its post, swinging in the wind, dangling by its wires. I told myself the storm knocked it loose, wrote it in my report, sat back down. Then the system beeped. Access alert. Someone had entered a code at the back entrance. I pulled up the access log. Green light. Someone was inside. It wasn't a worker. It wasn't another guard. I grabbed the desk phone. Dead. Checked my cell. No signal. I left the control room, started walking the hallway, holding my phone up, searching for any signal at all. And then, the building went dark. Everything, all at once, pitch black. I ran for the stairwell. Get to the truck, just get to the truck. The stairwell was nearly pitch black. I used the darkness as cover, moved quietly. I figured whoever cut the power had come from the generator room, in the basement. The basement was one floor below the lobby, which meant they were below me, between me and the exit. I made it down to the 4th floor. Then I heard it, a door opening. Below me. I stopped. Then I heard them, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, getting louder, coming up the stairs. I turned around, started moving back up, quiet, as fast as I could without making a sound. My plan, get back to the 6th floor, past the door. There's a ladder, leads to a roof hatch. I'd climb up, hide in the darkness, wait. Then, my gun hit the railing. A loud metallic clang echoed through the entire stairwell. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. 1 second, 2, 3. Then they started running. I ran, faster than I have ever moved in my life, up the stairs, floor after floor, lungs burning. At the top, I shoved the 6th floor door open hard, let it slam shut on its own behind me, then sprinted past it to the ladder, and climbed. The diversion worked. I heard him burst through the door, heard his footsteps pound down the hallway. He didn't look up. I dropped from the ladder, 10 feet, hit the floor hard, and ran. He heard it. The door crashed open again. His footsteps thundered back into the stairwell. Both of us, sprinting, full speed, floor after floor after floor. I stayed 1 flight ahead, the whole way down. Then, from somewhere below me, a crash, a cry of pain. I didn't stop. I did not look back. I hit the lobby, slammed through the front entrance, sprinted across the parking lot. Rain pouring, wind howling, hit the fob, engine started, doors unlocked, jumped in. And just as I looked up through the windshield, I saw him, dressed entirely in black, mask, hood, bursting through the building entrance, running straight at my truck. I floored it. Tires screamed against the wet pavement. I didn't stop driving until I reached the main road. I called the police. They arrived 15 minutes later. We searched the entire building, the lot, the surrounding woods. Nothing, until they checked the stairwell, right where the crash had been. A fully loaded, unregistered, semi-automatic handgun dropped on the stairs. To this day, no one knows why someone broke into that building. There was nothing inside worth stealing, but I know one thing. That night, I got lucky. I worked nights in a corporate office building in New Jersey. For the most part, the nights were quiet, boring, uneventful. I almost miss that feeling now. It started just after midnight. The last employees had gone home. The lobby was empty except for me and the blue glow of the security monitors. My job was simple. Check the cameras, run patrol rounds, log incidents, watch for anything unusual. That night, scanning through the feeds, I noticed something on the underground garage camera. A figure, moving between the parked cars. That lot should have been completely empty at that hour. He wasn't heading to any car. He wasn't moving toward the exit, he was just wandering. Slow, deliberate, weaving between the rows like he was inspecting the space. Like he was making absolutely sure no one was watching. I called my supervisor. He told me to stay at my post and watch the cameras. But something was wrong. Something I couldn't name. So I grabbed my flashlight and went down myself. The elevator felt longer than it ever had before. The doors slid open. I stepped out and swept my flashlight across the garage. Empty. Completely, totally empty. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I walked every row, called out, "Security!" Checked every shadow between every car. Nothing. I went back upstairs, sat down, told myself the camera had glitched. Then I looked at the garage feed. He was back, standing in the exact same spot. I had just been down there. I had walked that entire garage. There was no physical way he could have gotten back to that spot without me seeing him. Unless he knew I was coming. Unless he watched me the entire time. For the next 20 minutes, I watched him move through the garage. Slow, careful. He drifted toward the stairwell door. And then, just before reaching it, he vanished from the frame. I checked every camera, every hallway, every floor, every exit. Gone. No one disappears that fast. Not without knowing exactly where every camera is pointed. Then the lobby elevator dinged. Doors slid open. Nobody inside. But on the polished lobby floor, wet footprints. Bare feet, leading out of the elevator, across the lobby. Bare feet, in winter, in a building he had no right to be in. He was inside the building. I called for backup, and then, against every instinct, I took the elevator to the 5th floor. Halfway down the hall, one office door was slightly open. It was always locked at night. Always. I pushed it open with my flashlight, swept the room. Empty. I stepped back into the hallway and stopped, because I heard them. Footsteps, behind me. Not mine. Heavy, wet, uneven, moving fast. I spun around, swept the flashlight to the far end of the hallway, and there he was. Long, dark coat, standing at the end of the hall. Not running, just walking toward me, slow, purposeful, like he had all the time in the world. And then it hit me. He had been behind me the entire time. Every room I checked, he was just out of sight, waiting for me to turn away, following me. I ran, straight for the stairwell, slammed the door behind me, locked it, pressed my back against it. The footsteps stopped. I sat in that dark stairwell, shaking, listening to nothing but my own heartbeat. When backup finally arrived, we swept every floor, every room, every stairwell, the garage. Nothing. No sign of him. No trace. This happened just a few days ago. My first night as a mobile security trainee. Mobile security means you don't sit in one building. You drive. You respond to sites. You check buildings, disarm fire alarms, run perimeter patrols. That night, my supervisor took me out to a medical clinic in Mississauga. 1:15 in the morning. Routine site visit. But as we stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the building, something was wrong. The underground parking garage was wide open, and the front door of the clinic shouldn't be possible. Broken, busted open. No alarm, not a single alert from the system. As if whatever had happened here happened in a way the building never registered. We went inside, and then my supervisor grabbed my arm. Look at the elevator. It was moving, on its own. Up from the ground floor, past the 2nd, past the 3rd, and stopped. At the 4th floor, the very top. I asked my supervisor if he thought someone was in there. He pulled out his baton and nodded. In that moment, I hated every decision that had led me to that building. But we got in the elevator and went up. The doors opened on the 4th floor, dark, silent. We turned on the lights and started checking every room. My supervisor told me to stay close, room by room. Nothing. Nobody. Then, from the stairwell directly below us, footsteps. We moved to the stairwell door. My supervisor's hand was on the handle, and then they stopped. Whoever was down there wasn't running. They were waiting. Waiting for us to open that door. My supervisor keyed his radio. "Dispatch, we need immediate backup. Someone is in the building with us. They're downstairs, possibly armed, possibly waiting to ambush." Dispatch told us to hold position. Do not approach. Backup was coming. 15 minutes, in a dark building, on the top floor, knowing that somewhere below us, something was waiting. My supervisor was scared too. I could see it on his face. I told him backup was coming, not to worry. I don't think either of us fully believed it. Then a voice echoed through the building from below. "Security!" Our senior supervisor. Inside. The three of us swept every floor, every room, every bathroom, every stairwell. Nobody. Not a single person. We were on the third floor when we heard it. The front door burst open. Footsteps. Running. Outside the building. By the time we reached the ground floor, they were gone. The three of us just stood there, in silence, in a broken clinic at 2 in the morning. No explanation for who it was. No idea how they moved through that building without any of us finding them. Either they found a hiding spot none of us could identify, or that building holds something none of us are ready to explain. I still don't know which one is worse. But I do know one thing. This weekend, I have to go back. Alone. 3 guards, 3 buildings, 3 nights that none of them will ever stop thinking about. They all did everything right. They called for backup. They followed their training. They made it out. But none of them ever fully left those buildings. If you work nights, if you've ever been alone in a building when something felt off, you already know exactly what they're describing. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't go outside. This has been The Cursed Owl. Your phone buzzes. You look down. AirTag found moving with you. 4 words. That's all it takes. 4 words and suddenly nothing about your day feels normal anymore. Because somewhere right now, on your car, in your bag, tucked into a crack you'd never think to check, someone planted a device. And they have been watching your every single move. Tonight I have 3 real stories from people who received that exact notification. 3 ordinary people who thought they were just going about their normal lives. For all 3 of them, it was only the beginning. This happened to me in late November of 2024. I was 18 years old. I was at the Walden Galleria Mall in Buffalo doing my Christmas shopping early like I always do. I genuinely loved the mall during the holidays. The decorations, the music, the energy in the air. Something about shopping when that Christmas feeling is everywhere just makes everything feel warmer and more exciting. I remember feeling completely relaxed that day, genuinely happy. I already had 3 bags with me: Victoria's Secret, Zara, Sephora. Got my brother and dad something from Zara. Got my sister and mom things from Sephora. Treated myself to a few things too. I had been walking around for hours at that point and my feet were starting to ache. So I found a bench not far from the tall Christmas tree the mall puts up every year and sat down to rest. The mall was starting to empty out. Closing time was approaching and the crowd was thinning with every passing minute. That's when he sat down next to me. He cracked a joke immediately. I laughed without even thinking. He seemed so completely harmless. An older man, maybe around 62, a little on the thin side. Ironically, he reminded me of a skinny Santa Claus. We talked for a couple of minutes and most of it was forgettable small talk. But 2 things stuck with me afterward. He mentioned he had been coming to this mall since the day it first opened, and that he was genuinely afraid it might shut down one day. There was something almost sad about the way he said it, and I remember feeling a little sorry for him. Then he looked at me and said I reminded him of his daughter. He pulled out his phone and showed me a picture. I looked at it and felt something shift slightly in my chest. The girl in the photo looked absolutely nothing like me. She also looked nothing like him. She appeared to be around 18 years old, and this man looked old enough to be her grandfather, not her father. I smiled and nodded anyway because I didn't want to make things awkward. Eventually, I decided it was time to go. I got up slightly awkwardly, said goodbye, and walked away without looking back. I always avoid awkwardness whenever I can. I found my car, started the engine, and began the 10-minute drive home. My brother Cody was out that night. He goes to the University of Buffalo and almost always goes out on Thursday nights. This night was no exception. I'd be alone. I turned into our cul-de-sac. It's not your typical wide-open court. It has a circular patch of grass with trees in the center, almost like a roundabout. I looped around toward the house, and right as I was about to pull into the driveway, My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. I glanced down at the notification. AirTag found moving with you. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I didn't pull into the driveway. Something instinctive stopped me. I looped back around and drove down the street instead. I needed to find this thing before I led whoever was tracking it directly to my front door. I pulled over and figured out how to make the AirTag emit a sound. My fingers were already trembling slightly as I held my phone. I was half expecting to hear beeping from somewhere outside the car, maybe stuck under the bumper or hidden in the wheel well. Instead, I heard it coming from one of my shopping bags. I dug through it with shaking hands, and the moment my fingers closed around that small disc, I felt genuinely nauseous. Like my body understood the danger before my brain fully caught up. I sat there holding this tiny white device that had been sitting in my Sephora bag the entire drive home, tracking every turn I made, feeding my location to someone I couldn't see. I threw it out the window, put the car in drive, and floored it back to the house. My heart was slamming so hard I could feel it in my throat. I tried to pull into the garage to hide my car, but my mom's car was already inside. I had no choice but to leave it sitting in the open driveway. I ran inside, locked the front door, and immediately called Cody. I told him what happened. He said if anyone comes to the house, call him right away. The way he said it made everything worse. He wasn't joking, but I could also hear in his voice that he'd been drinking. I went to the living room and turned on the TV. I told myself it was over. The device was gone. Whoever it was would have no way to find me now. I took a long, slow breath and tried to convince myself I was safe. But I wouldn't be telling this story if it ended there. The doorbell rang. The sound hit me like a physical blow. My whole body went rigid. It was like some part of me had been bracing for it without realizing. Right after the doorbell came 3 loud, slow, deliberate knocks. I crept toward the door, practically tiptoeing. I was holding my breath without even realizing it. Through the textured glass, I could make out a figure standing on the other side. Then a muffled voice came through. "Hey, Ashley, I think you might have my AirTag." The blood drained from my face. He knew my name. It hit me all at once. It was him, the man from the mall. He had put that AirTag into my Sephora bag deliberately. He had followed me all the way home. When he saw me through the glass, he called out that he promised it was an accident, that he must have dropped it in my bag by mistake. I felt a cold wave of rage and fear wash over me at the same time. I didn't believe a single word. Even if that were somehow true, the AirTag wasn't in my house. I had thrown it out the window down the street, which meant he had followed me home and watched me go inside regardless of where the device ended up. I called Cody again with shaking hands. At first he laughed, thinking I was exaggerating. When he heard my voice properly, he went completely quiet. He said he was leaving right now, 10 minutes, maybe less. I looked back at the door. The figure was gone. The glass showed nothing but the empty porch. I exhaled shakily and pressed my back against the wall, trying to slow my breathing down. Maybe he left. Maybe he panicked and ran. I went back to the living room and turned the volume up on the TV, filling the silence with something. I kept my eyes on the door and counted the minutes. Then out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. I turned toward the window. My entire body went cold. He was standing right outside the glass, face pressed directly against it, staring in at me. And when he saw me notice him, he smiled. I felt my legs go weak beneath me. That smile is something I will never stop seeing. He lifted his hand slowly and tapped the glass once, then twice. Then in a low, completely calm voice that made my skin crawl from the inside out, he said, "Don't pretend you don't know I'm watching you." I screamed into the phone at Cody. I could barely form words. I called 911 and stayed on the line while that man stood outside my window smiling at me like this was a game he was enjoying. I locked myself in the back office, the only room with no windows facing the front, and sat on the floor with my knees against my chest, listening to every sound in the house. A few minutes later, I heard Cody's car pull in. He ran inside and we both looked at the window together. The man was gone. The police officer who responded searched the area thoroughly but found nothing. No footprints, no evidence, nothing to prove he had ever been there at all. I remember sitting on the couch afterward feeling completely hollowed out, like something had been taken from me that I'd never fully get back. The officer gave me a police report number and suggested I contact Apple to try to track the device's owner. I tried the next day, but it turned out to be a far more complicated legal process than I expected. And when a couple of weeks passed without anything further happening, I slowly let it go. Maybe he saw Cody and the police arrive and decided never to return. But what I keep coming back to even now, no matter how hard I try to leave it behind, is that photograph. The girl on his phone. She looked around 18. She looked nothing like me. She looked nothing like him. I hope with everything I have that it was just a random photo he pulled from the internet. I genuinely cannot allow myself to consider what it might mean if it wasn't. I no longer live where this happened. That's the only reason I'm comfortable talking about it now. I had recently moved to a new city for a work promotion. Nothing dramatic, just your standard mid-sized city. I was still getting used to everything. The apartment, the commute, the rhythm of a new place where I barely knew anyone yet. It was a Tuesday evening, a 15-minute drive home from work. I was listening to a podcast, completely unwinding from the day, when my phone buzzed on the dashboard. I glanced at it. AirTag found moving with you. I felt a small jolt of unease, but honestly almost laughed it off. My first thought was that someone had dropped their keys in the work parking lot and I had driven past them. Or maybe a friend was pranking me. I actually smiled for a second. Then I opened the notification and read the full details. The AirTag had been moving with me for over an hour. The smile disappeared immediately. A cold, creeping feeling started working its way up from my stomach. That meant it had been in my car before I even left work. Someone had placed it there while my car was sitting in the parking lot and had been tracking every single turn I made on the way home. I checked the back seat while still driving, reached under the passenger seat, opened the glove compartment, pulled over briefly to check the trunk. Nothing, absolutely nothing out of place. But my phone kept insisting the device was there. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and tried to think clearly, but my mind kept jumping ahead to conclusions I didn't want to reach. I had no real choice but to keep driving home, which meant I was about to lead whoever planted this thing directly to my apartment. I told myself the building had decent security, that knowing where I lived didn't mean they could actually get to me. I tried very hard to believe that. Once I got home, I searched the car again, more thoroughly this time. Checked every pocket, every seam, every compartment. Still nothing. I went inside and tried to research what to do. I thought about calling the police, but talked myself out of it. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my phone and feeling completely alone in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. What was I supposed to tell them? That I received a notification but couldn't find any device? There was nothing to show them. No evidence, no suspect, nothing. I barely slept that night. The next morning I drove to work and received the notification again when I arrived. I stared at it for a long moment, then locked my phone and put it face down on my desk. I spent the entire workday completely unable to focus, running through every person I could think of who might have done this. Ex-boyfriends, guys from work, friends of friends, anyone who had ever seemed a little too interested. I came up with nobody. Not a single person in my life who I could imagine going this far. That evening I told myself I wasn't leaving the car until I found it. I spent nearly an hour going through every inch of that car. Every crack, every gap, every space too small to seem worth checking. I had already searched most of it twice, and I was starting to genuinely question myself. Then I ran my hand slowly along the seam where the back seat meets the rear panel. My fingers hit something solid. I already knew what it was before I pulled it out. My hand went completely still for a moment. I sat there in the back seat of my own car, holding this tiny disc in my palm, understanding for the first time that someone had physically gotten into my car, had touched my things, had pressed this device deliberately into a gap far enough in that I'd missed it twice. I felt exposed in a way I had never experienced before. like the walls around me had suddenly become transparent. I took the battery out instead of destroying it. Evidence, I kept telling myself. Keep it as evidence. I set it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. That night I lay awake going through every person again. More carefully this time. More honestly. The silence in the apartment felt different than it had the night before. Heavier. Like something had changed that couldn't be changed back. I came up with no one. Then a few evenings later I came home late after a particularly exhausting day. I walked down the hallway toward my apartment, already thinking about what I was going to make for dinner. Reached into my bag for my keys out of habit. And stopped. Every muscle in my body seized at once. My apartment door was already open. Wide open. I live alone. Nobody has a key. Not my parents, not a single friend. There was no reason on earth for that door to be open. I stood completely frozen in the hallway, staring at it. I remember the overhead light flickering slightly and thinking for one absurd second that I was imagining. I didn't go in. Every instinct screamed at me not to take a single step through that doorway. I turned around, walked straight back to the elevator, went down to my car and called the police. They arrived and swept the entire apartment, every room, every closet, under the bed, behind every door. No one was there. But what disturbed me far more than that was what they didn't find. No fingerprints, no sign of forced entry, no scratches on the lock, nothing broken, nothing moved, nothing taken, not a single piece of evidence that anyone had ever been inside at all. I sat on the couch while they asked me questions, and I remember feeling like the floor was slowly tilting, like the version of reality I had always trusted was quietly coming apart. I showed them the AirTag and told them everything, the notification, the device I had found in the back seat, all of it. They kept asking if I had a history of being stalked, if I knew anyone who might want to frighten me, if there was anyone from my past I was concerned about. I shook my head to every single question, and each time I did, I felt more and more helpless. I moved out not long after. Things went quiet once I left and have stayed quiet since. I'm fairly certain whoever it was never followed me to the new place. But there is one thing I cannot move past. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many times I try to rationalize it or find some other explanation, that apartment door was not kicked in. It was not broken into. There was no damage anywhere. It was opened with a key that nobody else should have had.
At 11:33 p.m., the doorbell rang. A man held up a tiny bag and said in a dead voice, "I have your pizza." He knew the exact address. And later I found my front door unlocked with his bag left on the porch. One of the perks of my job is that I get to travel quite a bit, sometimes overseas to places like Greece or Italy, but most of the time I stay right here in the United States. A few years ago, work sent me to the Adirondacks, a beautiful mountainous region in upstate New York. If you've ever been there in the fall, you know exactly what I mean. The leaves turn into a sea of bright red, orange, and gold. The mountains look like something out of a fairy tale. It's absolutely breathtaking. Normally my company books a hotel, but this time I wanted real peace and solitude. So I went on Airbnb and found a secluded wooden house deep in the trees. It had hiking trails right outside and a big back deck overlooking the mountains. It looked perfect. I arrived Friday night just as the sun was setting. I poured myself a drink, sat out on the deck listening to the quiet forest, and went to bed early. The next morning I woke up around 6 and decided to go for a jog on the nearby trails. That's when I first felt it, the strong feeling that someone was watching me. Every step I took, I kept looking over my shoulder. The woods were still, but I could swear I heard branches moving when there was no wind. My heart started beating faster. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. I'm a city person. Being alone out in the middle of nowhere was probably just getting to me. I finished the run and headed back to the house. I took a long shower and tried to relax, but then the strange noises started. Soft creaks in the walls, little bumps and thumps that seemed to come from inside the house. I told myself it was just an old wooden cabin settling. That's normal, right? Later that afternoon, I drove into town for my work meetings. I met up with coworkers, had dinner, and grabbed a few drinks. I'll be honest, I stayed out as long as I possibly could. I really didn't want to go back to that house alone. I finally pulled up around 10:45 at night. I went through the entire place and checked every lock and window 3 times. Then I went upstairs and tried to sleep. Sleep never came. Every tiny sound made me jolt awake. The wind outside, the house creaking, my own breathing sounding too loud in the dark. A little after midnight I gave up. I needed a cigarette to calm my nerves. I grabbed my coat and phone and quietly headed downstairs. The stairs led straight into the dark living room. To the left was the kitchen, with faint moonlight coming through the sliding glass door. I stepped forward and froze. There was a shape in the kitchen, a dark silhouette blocking the moonlight. My stomach dropped. For a few seconds I just stood there, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just shadows, just my imagination playing tricks. Then I reached over and flipped on the light switch. There was a man standing there. He was tall, at least 6 feet, long shaggy hair, thick beard, probably in his late 30s. He didn't move. He just stared straight at me with cold eyes. 10 long seconds passed. It felt like 10 hours. Then he lunged at me. I ran. The kitchen counter gave me just enough time to get ahead. I sprinted up the stairs, slammed the bedroom door, and locked it as fast as I could. I know it sounds like a horror movie mistake, but I didn't have my keys. I didn't know if he had a weapon, and running into the pitch-black woods seemed even worse. I called 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher stayed on the line while the man started slamming into the door. The hits were violent. Each one shook the entire frame. Between the blows, he kept screaming the same disturbing words over and over. "I love you. I've changed. I need you back." I yelled back that he had the wrong person. I had never seen him before in my life, but he wouldn't stop. The wood started splintering. I could actually see his fist punching through the door. Then I heard the sirens. Multiple police cars pulled up fast. Right as his hand broke through the door, there was a loud crash downstairs. The police had tackled him. I climbed out the bedroom window onto a small roof. An officer helped me down safely. They arrested the man while he was still screaming incoherently. That's when the police called the owner, and that's when we learned the truth. The man was her ex-fiancé. After their breakup, he had disappeared and gone completely off-grid. For the past several days, he had been secretly living inside one of the closets in the house. The police found empty beer cans, snack wrappers, and a makeshift bed hidden there. He was also carrying a knife tucked into his belt. If I hadn't gone downstairs for that cigarette when I did, I don't know if I would still be alive today. About 2 years ago, I had a job interview 5 hours away in another state. Instead of driving home late at night, my fiancée suggested I stay over. She found an Airbnb only 10 minutes from the interview location. The owner seemed nice and even let me check in early so I could shower and get ready. The interview went well. Afterward, I grabbed some tacos, went back to the house, called my fiancée, and settled in to watch a movie. I've never liked sleeping in other people's beds, so I decided to crash on the huge wraparound couch in the living room. It was actually really comfortable. Big TV, fireplace, surround sound. I put on Avengers Endgame and started dozing off around 11 p.m. Then the doorbell rang. It rang once, then again, then a third time, then a fourth. It was 11:33 at night. I sat up, confused. Who would be ringing the doorbell this late? I got up and peeked through the front window. There was a skinny man standing on the porch, head down, holding a small brown paper bag. Something about him looked off. I opened the main door but kept the screen door locked. In a completely flat, monotone voice, he said, "I have your pizza." The bag clearly wasn't big enough for a pizza. I told him he had the wrong house and started closing the door. He rang again. Same voice. "I have your pizza." This time he even recited the exact address. Then I saw his hand reach for the screen door handle. That was enough. I slammed the main door and yelled that I was calling the police if he didn't leave right now. I watched from the window as he finally walked away and got into an old red sedan with one busted headlight. I let out a sigh of relief, but it only lasted 30 seconds, because his headlights were still on, shining straight into the living room. The car was just sitting there in the driveway. I went upstairs to get a better view. The engine was running, but the driver's seat was empty. Annoyed and a little freaked out, I did something stupid. I went outside and walked straight up to the driver's side window. No one was inside. I turned and sprinted back into the house, locked every single door and window, and ran upstairs. A few minutes later, I looked out again. I saw the man walking back toward the car, coming from the direction of my front door. He got in and finally drove away. I didn't sleep at all that night. At 4 a.m., I packed my things and decided to leave early. As I reached the front door, I froze. The door was unlocked and slightly ajar. Only the chain lock was holding it shut. I clearly remembered locking everything before. Then I noticed the brown paper bag sitting on the porch. I never opened it. As I backed out of the driveway and reached the end of the street, I saw an ugly green house. Parked in the driveway was the same red sedan with the busted headlight. I messaged the Airbnb owner and told him everything that had happened. He started typing a reply, then stopped. He never responded. A few days later, the listing was completely gone. To this day, I still wonder if the whole thing was some kind of setup. Let me start by saying this. Monsters are real. They're not ghosts or demons. They're people. Last summer, my wife and I took our 2 kids on a small beach vacation. We found an Airbnb that was much cheaper than the nearby hotels. It was a nice house at the end of a quiet, dead-end street with a creek running behind it. It felt private and peaceful, exactly what we wanted. The first day was perfect. We spent hours at the beach building sandcastles, playing in the waves, and the kids actually got along. That night we played Uno as a family and went to bed happy. The next morning, our 8-year-old son looked exhausted. He barely touched his breakfast. After some gentle questioning, he finally told us what was wrong. He said he saw ghosts in the backyard during the night. Shadows moving near the tree line. They walked slowly toward the house and then just disappeared. One of them even waved at him. He was crying while telling us, clearly terrified. We comforted him and told him it was probably just a bad dream. Ghosts aren't real. The rest of that day went normally. But when we got back from the beach that evening, we noticed the back door was unlocked. Nothing was missing, so we made sure everything was locked and went to bed. That night, around midnight, our son woke us up again. He was shaking and crying. "The ghosts are back," he whispered. This time, one of them had tapped on his window and whispered, "If you scream, we'll hurt your family." They told him to open the door. My blood ran cold. We let him sleep in our room the rest of the night. The next night, I decided we should all sleep together in the living room, a family campout. Safety in numbers. At 2:30 in the morning, my son shook me awake. "They're outside," he whispered. I looked toward the sliding glass door, and my heart stopped. 3 figures were standing there in the backyard. They were wearing black hooded clothing and horrifying black masks with big, bulging white eyes. My wife screamed. My daughter screamed. One of them yanked hard on the sliding door. Thank God it was locked. My daughter grabbed her phone and called 911. I picked up a heavy walking stick and stood right in front of the door. The 3 figures just stood there, staring at us, almost amused. Then one of them slowly pulled out a knife and waved it back and forth, taunting us. We were all hysterical. Then, out of nowhere, a police officer tackled one of them from the side. The other 2 tried to run but were caught almost immediately. When the masks came off, they were just 3 young men. 2 were 20, 1 was 18. All of them were carrying knives. They had been targeting tourist families in the area. They thought families would be easy to scare and probably had cash. The police said they probably only wanted money, but I'll never believe that. Not after seeing that knife. Not after hearing my son cry in fear. Not after seeing the pure terror in my family's eyes. We left the next morning and never went back. Because sometimes the deepest scars aren't the ones you can see on your body. They're the ones left in your mind. So the next time you book an Airbnb, triple check every lock. Check the closets. Look under the beds if you have to. And if the doorbell rings late at night, maybe don't answer it. Because you never know who might already be inside.
I was working the night shift alone at a 24-hour gym. Around 2 a.m., I noticed a man on a treadmill in the corner, running 9 miles per hour for 15 minutes without stopping. When I walked out to check on him, I saw the treadmill was covered in blood. His feet were bare. They were tearing apart with every step. He didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He just kept staring straight ahead with his mouth open. When I yelled at him to stop, he said in the coldest voice I have ever heard, "Are you there?" This memory still terrifies me. Outside of police and some close family, this is the first time I've fully revisited it. A few years ago, I got my first job at a 24-hour gym. I was in a gap year between high school and college, so I worked a lot of night shifts. The gym was open around the clock, with keycard access only, meaning often there was just 1 or 2 employees on the whole site. Members could check in, use the equipment, and leave. The facility essentially managed itself digitally. All I really had to do was sit in the office, monitor cameras, walk around occasionally, do some light cleaning, and talk to guests. This was in a rough part of town, but for the most part, everyone was friendly. A small gym where regulars tend to know each other. This one specific night, I was working 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Long, boring shift. Around 2 a.m., I had finished all my rounds and paperwork and was sitting at the cameras. Everything was normal. Not many people come in to work out at 2 a.m., but there were a couple of regulars who came and went. I'd been there a few months, so I recognized almost everyone. Except one man. I first noticed him on the treadmill in the far corner. Normally, a new guest wouldn't catch my attention, but something made me look twice. I pulled up his treadmill number in the system, where I could monitor all equipment activity in real time. He was running 9 miles per hour. That's fast. That's genuinely impressive. But what I kept watching for was, he never stopped. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Not once did he slow or take a break or even shift his pace. I leaned closer to the camera feed and looked at him properly. The way I can only describe it is, unsettling doesn't cover it. He was wearing ragged clothes, long, messy hair. His face had not moved a single time in 15 minutes of running, just staring straight ahead, completely still expression, like nobody was home. Then I noticed his feet. He was barefoot, running 9 miles per hour for 15 minutes on a treadmill, barefoot, just staring into the distance. I was the only employee in the building. He was now the only member remaining. Just the two of us, in a 24-hour gym at 2 a.m. And something about what I was watching on that camera made me not want to go out there. We have a policy requiring shoes. I used that as my reason to leave the office, the professional excuse to go do what I was genuinely afraid to do. I walked out to the floor. The machine he was on was almost directly outside the employee hallway. I turned the corner. The treadmill was covered in blood. His feet were tearing apart as he ran. Not just bleeding, tearing. Blood not only dripping but splattering with every impact of his bare feet on the belt. A growing pool at the end of the conveyor. His face was still completely still, staring straight ahead, mouth open, not looking at me, not looking at the blood, not looking at anything. He looked like he was on every substance simultaneously, and something in my gut told me he was dangerous. I still yelled at him to stop. I don't know where I found that. I had to raise my voice over the sound of his feet hitting the belt. He didn't turn his head. He didn't slow. He just kept running and staring forward with his mouth open. I yelled again, something like, "Hello, what are you doing?" He said, in the coldest, most hollow voice I have ever heard from a human being, "Are you there?" He wasn't out of breath. He wasn't panting. He said it as calmly as if he was sitting still. I told him to stop again several more times. Each time, "Are you there?" Same voice, same tone, same nothing behind the eyes. The pool of blood at the end of the treadmill was growing. I went back to the office and picked up my phone to call the police. Before I dialed, I glanced at the monitors. He was staring directly at the camera, still running, still bleeding, still mouth open, staring at the camera like he knew exactly where it was. I looked away from the screen. Then from outside the office door, he started screaming. Not words, just screaming, at the top of his lungs, so deep it barely sounded human. I watched on the monitor as he stepped off the treadmill without turning it off, and sprinted out of the camera frame. I clicked through every feed looking for him. 1 through 5, empty. Then I checked the employee hallway camera. He was standing 6 feet from the office door. I have no idea how he got into that hallway without a key card. I didn't think about that. I just locked the door. 5 seconds after I locked it, the handle rattled. Then the screaming started again, and the door shaking. I was in the corner of the office on the phone with dispatch, trying to explain what was happening, while a man whose feet were shredded from running barefoot for 20 minutes screamed on the other side of the door with a voice that barely sounded like a person. The dispatcher told me police were 5 minutes out. 5 minutes. I genuinely thought if he got through that door, I was not going to make it. I felt completely helpless, in a way I had never felt before. And I couldn't stop thinking about his voice saying, "Are you there?" Like he wasn't even sure I was real. Then the screaming stopped. The door went still. I checked the cameras. He was gone. Every feed. Just gone. No exit recorded. No trace. Just blood on the treadmill and a pool on the floor. And silence. When the police arrived, I made them search the entire building before I would leave the office. They found nobody. I answered their questions and drove home. I quit the next day and have not entered that gym since. I still don't know what he wanted, or what he was, or where he went. I just know that voice asking, "Are you there?" in that flat, empty tone, while blood pooled beneath him, is something I will never fully leave behind.
Four stories, 4 reminders that horror doesn't need a mask or a monster. Sometimes the scariest thing in the world is just another person, and the realization that you're not as safe as you thought you were. If these stories stayed with you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I release new true horror compilations every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Want early access to stories, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes updates? Join the Cursed Owl community on Patreon. Link in the description. Lock your doors, trust your instincts, and whatever you do, don't ignore that notification. This has been the Cursed Owl.